listen carefully. There are houses that seem unshakable. There are loves that seem unbreakable. Yet with just one word, just one glance from an outsider, everything can crack. Life itself is fragile, like a ceramic vase that, with one fall, shatters completely. In that quiet riverside village, there lived a poor couple who believed their happiness was as solid as clay after it had been fired in the kiln. But within only a few short days, everything changed. The husband was John Miller, a poor potter. His wife was Mary, gentle and faithful. And the man who appeared and broke their peace was none other than Henry Brown, a wealthy, cunning, and greedy pottery merchant. John had lived his whole life with calloused hands. Every dawn, before the sun rose over the bamboo grove, he was already seated at his old wooden wheel. Clay smeared from his hands to the hem of his shirt as he shaped vases and bowls one by one. His posture was bent, his eyes focused, as if nothing else in the world mattered except the form of that soft lump of earth. He believed that with hard work, life would eventually be full and warm. Mary, his wife, was a gentlewoman. She wore a brown dress, its shoulders worn thin, sometimes patched in many places. Yet each time John looked up, she always smiled. She lit the fire, laid the pottery out to dry in the sun, then waited for her husband to return so she could serve their humble meal. They had nothing more than a few potatoes and a bowl of vegetable soup. Yet their small house by the bamboo grove was always filled with laughter. The villagers often called them the Sparrow Couple. Small, poor, but chirping happily all day long. Everyone thought nothing could ever part them. Then one morning, the village grew lively. From the end of the dusty red road came a horse-drawn cart covered with red cloth, its wheels grinding up clouds of dust. Bells jingled across the market. People whispered, "Henry Brown has returned." Henry was a pottery merchant known throughout the region, wealthy and powerful. He owned golden inlaid vases that adorned the homes of high officials. A single piece of his pottery was worth a whole year's labor of a poor family. When he stepped down from his carriage, Henry wore a long cloak and a cold, sharp smile. Amid the crowded market, his gaze stopped on Mary. In that look was calculation, like a hunter spotting fresh prey. Mary wore no silk or gold jewelry, yet her simple beauty only made Henry crave her more. He whispered to his servant, if that woman were draped in silk, she would shine brighter than the full moon. That afternoon, as John carried jars of pottery to the riverbank, Henry deliberately passed by his house. Seeing Mary washing clothes by the well, he stopped, his eyes fixed on her. He stepped closer, his voice dripping with sweetness. "Mary, you are truly beautiful. But why wear such a dress, patched over and over? A woman like you deserves silk as soft as water, bright as a pearl. Your husband is too poor, he could never afford it." Mary froze, her cheeks flushed. She wanted to snap at him, yet she stayed silent, because his words, unintentionally, touched the deepest corner of her heart. That night, when John came home with only a few small coins in his hand, Mary looked at him and, in her mind, flashed the image of herself in the silk dress Henry had mentioned. John smiled wearily. "Today I earned just a little, but tomorrow I'll try harder." Mary nodded, but her heart suddenly felt hollow. She wondered, perhaps I deserve more, don't I? Within only 3 days of Henry's arrival, the atmosphere in their small house had changed. Just 3 short days, and the love that had seemed strong for 10 years began to tremble. People often say that a strong wind cannot topple a tree, but drops of water, falling endlessly, can wear down stone. Henry knew this well. and he was dripping doubt into Mary's heart drop by drop. Mary sat by the door, her hands still scented with soap, her eyes gazing at the dusty road. In her imagination, she saw herself dressed in silk, walking through the market as everyone marvelled. Beside her was still John, with his cracked hands and worn shirt. The image made her sigh. John remained unaware. He still believed their love was as solid as a fired vase in the flames. But he did not understand that even the sturdiest vase, with just a small crack, just one collision, could shatter. One evening, Mary gently asked her husband, "John, have you ever thought of buying me a silk dress?" John froze. He looked at his calloused hands, at the few coins scattered on the table, then smiled sadly. "Silk is very expensive, Mary, but I promise, one day, I will buy it for you." Mary turned her face away, hiding a sigh. In her heart, the first crack had already appeared, and far away, in the shadows, Henry smiled. He knew he had just planted the seed of doubt into the woman's heart. After the night, Mary asked about the silk dress, and John already felt uneasy inside. Yet he still believed that as long as he worked harder, everything would be fine. He threw himself into his craft, his hands growing more calloused, his back bending lower over the potter's wheel. But the harder he worked, the more he realized the distance between himself and his wife's dreams was as far as the other side of the river. Meanwhile, Henry did not slow down. He knew a seed of doubt needed watering to bloom into weariness. The first test. The silk dress. One market day, Henry purposely appeared before Mary. In his hands was a jade-green silk dress, shimmering under the sun like the surface of the morning river. He held it out, his voice sweet as honey. "Try it on. Mary, I want to see how beautiful you would look wrapped in this." Mary stepped back, her eyes fixed on the glittering dress. She shook her head. "Struggling to remain calm, I cannot accept it." Henry smirked. "You don't have to accept it. But think about it. If John truly loved you, he would have bought you one long ago. A beautiful woman dressed only in patched-up rags. Such a waste." Mary turned away, her heart pounding. She told John nothing when she came home. Yet her eyes had changed. At their humble dinner, she looked down at her old dress and, for a fleeting moment, compared it with that gleaming jade green that still lingered in her memory. That night, she asked again John, "When will you be able to buy me a silk dress?" John fell silent. He promised once more, but that promise sounded like the wind over the fields. No one knew when it would ever be true. The second test. The golden vase. Henry did not stop. He shifted his trick. He invited John to his warehouse under the pretense of buying more clay. In the vast room, Henry set before John a gleaming golden vase, radiant like the sun itself. "Look at this. John, this is what real pottery is worth. People would pay a fortune for a vase like this. You make clay bowls, and no one remembers them. But with gold, people admire, people praise. Wouldn't you want Mary to hold a vase like this in her hands?" John stood frozen. Sweat poured down his forehead. He did not answer, but in his heart, a wound opened. News spread quickly. People whispered Henry boasted of his golden vase and said he would give it to a woman who knew how to value him. When Mary heard those words, her face paled. That evening, she looked at her husband with reproachful eyes. "You have made pottery all your life, but have I ever once seen a golden vase? Another woman with Henry would surely live in silk and luxury." John choked, clutching his wife's hand. "Mary, I have only clay. But my heart is true gold." Don't you believe me?" Mary pulled her hand away, a tear shimmering at her lashes. That sentence, instead of warming her, only made her feel poverty was an undeniable truth. The third test. The magic seeing John and Mary's marriage cracking. Henry struck his final blow. On a bright moonlit night, he came to John, whispering like a seller of secrets. In his hand was a fistful of shimmering powder, glowing under the moonlight. "This is magic. Sprinkle it on clay, and your pottery will turn into pure gold. You will be rich. You can buy Mary silk dresses, golden vases, and everything she desires. Just share half with me." John trembled. His eyes locked on the sparkling powder, while his ears rang with his wife's voice. "If you love me, why don't you try just once?" This was the escape, yet also the trap. He shook his head weakly. "I don't need magic. I only need Mary to believe in me." Henry burst into bitter laughter. "Believe she has already started believing in me." "Indeed." That night, Mary burst into tears when John told her, "John, you are too poor. I don't want to always wear old clothes, always watch others live in gold and silver. If you truly loved me, why wouldn't you try? What are you afraid of?" John was crushed. That question cut across his heart like a knife. He looked into Mary's tear-filled eyes and felt the distance between them had never been greater. In the days that followed, their little house grew suffocating. John worked the clay, but his hands trembled. The clay slipped from the mold, cracked, shattered. Mary sat by the window, silent, her eyes fixed on the road Henry often passed. Villagers began to gossip. Some pitied John, others mocked. How can a poor potter keep his wife against gold and riches? The rumors spread like wildfire, bowing John lower and lower. Inside him, despair piled up. His hands still shaped clay, but his heart felt bound. He no longer knew what to do to hold on to the trust that was slipping away. The climax drew near. On one side was the love that had bound them for 10 years. On the other was the blinding temptation of gold. John stood at the edge of a precipice. He felt like a vase waiting to be placed in the kiln, either fired into lasting pottery or shattering to pieces in the flames. That night, the sky was clear, the bright moon shining down on the silent river. John sat alone on the sandy bank, his hands clutching his head, his heart heavy as stone. In his mind, Mary's question kept echoing, "If you love me, why don't you try?" Those words pierced his heart, choking his breath. He felt powerless, like a shattered clay pot that could never be mended. In his despair, an old man with a long white beard and hair appeared. He wore a grey cloak, held a bamboo staff, and his eyes were kind yet strangely radiant. The old man sat down beside John, his deep, warm voice like the wind rustling through bamboo groves. "My son, why are you sitting here lamenting?" John looked up, his voice breaking. "I am too poor. My wife wants silk. She wants gold. All I have is clay, and these rough, calloused hands. I fear I will lose her." The old man smiled gently and nodded. People often believe gold and silver can hold love. But in truth, love only needs an honest heart. The clay in your hands is not ordinary. It only needs a little faith. Then he took a small stone from his pocket, round like a pearl, glowing with a soft light. He placed it in John's trembling hand. "Use this stone. It will not turn clay into gold, but it will make your pottery firm and radiant, something everyone will want to buy. Remember, the true magic lies in your heart, not in Henry's hands." John clutched the stone, feeling a warmth spread through his body. For the first time in weeks, a glimmer of hope lit up inside him. The next morning, John followed the old man's advice. He ground the stone, mixed it into the clay, and shaped a jar. When it was fired, the jar gleamed unusually bright, and when tapped, it rang with a pure sound like a silver bell. Word spread quickly through the village. People came in crowds, marveling at it, and were willing to pay higher prices than ever before. In just a few days, John's household had money. He did not hesitate to buy Mary the silk dress she had always dreamed of. When John brought the dress home, Mary was stunned. Her trembling fingers touched the smooth silk. Her eyes filled with tears. In that moment, memories flooded back Henry's tempting whispers, her doubts, John's tears when she reproached him. Her heart twisted with guilt. John, I have been so wrong. I doubted you. I let another's words sway me. But now I understand. I do not need silk. I do not need golden jars. I only need you. John held his wife's hand tightly, his own eyes brimming Mary. I never stopped loving you. I only feared you might forget it. They embraced, their tears flowing together, washing away every crack in their hearts. But Henry refused to give up. When he heard that John's pottery sold like gold, he was consumed with jealousy. He gathered his thugs and stormed John's house, intent on taking everything by force. The pounding of hooves shook the ground, dust rising in clouds. Henry stood at the door, his face flushed red, shouting, "Without me, you would forever be a poor, wretched potter. This wealth was meant to be mine." John stepped outside, unafraid. Holding Mary's hand firmly, he turned to Henry, his voice steady. "Henry, you are mistaken. Wealth does not define true worth. Only hard-working hands and an honest love can turn clay into gold." At that moment, the jars inside John's house suddenly glowed. A brilliant golden light radiated, brighter than any torch, sending Henry's men fleeing in terror. Henry tried to stand his ground, but the dazzling light seemed to expose all his greed and deceit. He trembled, then collapsed in the yard, screaming. But no one believed him anymore. The villagers gathered, witnessing the wondrous sight. Some stood with mouths agape. Others nodded knowingly at last. The truth was revealed. That light did not come from gold, silver, or false magic, but from pure love and honest hands. Henry was condemned by the whole village. Those who once admired him now turned away. No one traded with him anymore. No one even greeted him. Before long, he was forced to leave the village, carrying with him unbearable shame. Meanwhile, John and Mary became the village's pride. People called him the potter with golden hands, not because of the magic stone, but because he had preserved honesty in his heart. Their household was no longer poor, but more importantly, they had kept each other. On many nights after, Mary would sit beside her husband, watching the flames flicker in the kiln. She would whisper, "I was once blind, comparing you with Henry. But now I see gold and silver cannot bring happiness. You are the true treasure of my life." John smiled, his eyes shining in the firelight. "And you, Mary, are the reason I turn clay into gold." Their story spread across the land, retold through generations. People remembered it not only to praise the fine pottery, but as a reminder, true wealth does not lie in silk or golden jars, but in love, in faith, and in honest laboring hands. And even now, when one stands by that river, people still recall the golden light shining from the jars on that fateful night. It illuminated not only the village, but also the hearts of those once lost in greed and doubt.